I'm Savannah Sundheim.
And I'm Sophia Rogers.
And you're watching 5 Questions.
Today we got to sit down and talk with two-time Emmy Award winner and Broadway star, Michael Park.
And here's what he had to say.
Question 1. What was a moment in your career when you realized that acting was going to be your profession of choice?
The moment I realized that this would be my profession is when I was driving back from New York. My parents had driven me to 890 Broadway, which was the hub of every audition in New York at the time, to Canandaigua, New York. And I had landed the role of Raoul in Ken Hill's Phantom of the Opera. My father looked in the rearview mirror at me and said, "Michael, you realize you've picked an occupation I know absolutely nothing about." And I kind of internally went, yes. It didn't really turn into a profession. I thought that I would have like a one-hit wonder kind of a career after this non-equity tour had kind of landed back in New York. I thought that was it. And then the next thing I know, because of my relationships with some other people in a couple of shows I did in Rochester, I was introduced to an agent. And that agent led me to a couple more auditions, and I ended up, very fortunately, in a very high-profile show called Hello Again at Lincoln Center at the Mitzi Newhouse. And it was the beginning of the beginning.
Question 2. How is working on a scripted TV show different from performing on stage?
The difference between working on a scripted television show as opposed to a stage production is that every day, we'll say for a soap opera, every day I would get my scripts 3 days in advance. And sometimes I'd have 15 pages of work to memorize. Sometimes I would have 30 pages of work to memorize. But I had to memorize those 30 pages in 3 days with little or no rehearsal, as opposed to a theater production where you are rehearsing with your entire cast for 3 weeks to a month prior to your first preview, and then during those preview periods, you are still changing. You're rehearsing during the day, and then you're making those changes, and then applying those changes to your performance that night. So it's a longer rehearsal period with everybody involved, as opposed to, we'll say, a soap opera or a primetime show, where you are using you get very little rehearsal, and you're acting on the fly, and getting your direction, and then applying those notes and those directions to your performance immediately.
Question 3. What is something you have not done yet but would like to in the future?
I would love to be on a sitcom. I would love to have the chance to make people laugh, work with writers, trade ideas, get into the rhythm with a cast of super intelligently funny people, and 9 times out of 10 that's what you see on TV, are super intelligently funny people. I would love the chance to do that. One shot. Give me one shot. Please.
Question 4. What is the most valuable piece of advice that you have been given as an actor?
It's kind of emotional because my friend who gave me this advice is no longer with us. I was doing this amnesia storyline and As the World Turns. So I walk in and I say, "Ben, I don't know. I'm having a tough time with this. I just don't know how to get from one point to the next, knowing that I don't know, but not knowing that I don't know. Very confusing." And he said, quite nonchalantly, he said, "Just make every choice logical." And I don't know why, but the skies kind of opened up, and I knew exactly what he meant. And I knew how to tackle basically almost every storyline from that moment on. It followed me through all of the time that he was no longer, when he passed away. It followed me after that, and now I'm applying it to everything I do on stage. It's one piece of advice that I would also give young actors. Make your choices logical. If they're logical to you, they will be logical to your audience. And if you can understand your choices, your audience can understand your choices. And don't will an audience to feel what you're feeling. Your job is to just feel and to just be as an actor, not to inform someone how to feel.
Question 5. How does an actor balance the personal and professional life?
I bring up the soap opera in the sense that I was able to have a sustainable career and a sustainable job, which was really wonderful. And I was working 3 times, 4 times a week, and going home at 7 p.m. Getting home at 7, where I could be a dad. So it was kind of wonderful. During their younger years, I was on the soap, making a good wage, coming home at 7 p.m., maybe at the latest. Sometimes I was home, if I was only shooting in the AM, I was home at noon sometimes. So I was an active father in their school lives, and I was so fortunate to have that. Television prime time is completely different. Your schedule could be, you got to be there at 5 in the morning, you're shooting until 10 at night, you're missing a whole days. With theater, at least, when you're in rehearsing, and the rehearsing schedule ends at 6, so I'm usually home and I'm active. I'm active that way with my kids. It's a little easier now, and they're a little more understanding now because they're 12 and 16. They're still home. My 19-year-old's in college. But so it's a little easier now with them and their understanding of my career. At night, though, it still gets hairy. The person who has to pick up a lot of the slack when I'm doing we'll say Dear Evan Hansen, when I'm doing a Broadway show, is my wife has to do a lot of driving. So I'm sorry, Lori, but thank you.
We'd like to thank Michael Park for coming in and talking to us today.
And be sure to follow him on Twitter at Park24Hours.
Thanks again for watching 5 Questions.